Hey everyone, it's Desiree and I am here with day 17, and for this one I'm going to make 5 cards from the Simon Says Special Limited Edition Christmas Card Kit. So, loved all of the die cuts as always. This is the most beautiful stamp set. I mean, the images are just absolutely gorgeous. I'll be using this one image and then of course that sentiment, because I love believe in the magic of Christmas, because we must believe. Yes. And then there will be 4 other cards that come out. Now I am going to do a voiceover for that end, but I just wanted to pop in to say hello. I hope you're enjoying the series so far. So without any further ado, let's get started with card number 1. Okay, so here we are. We're going to do the voiceover now. All right, so I'm going to pull out the pine cone image from the stamp set. Now I'm going to use my Simon Says Stamp Intense Black ink, because I will be using my Prismacolor alcohol markers to color this image. Now I'm going to color this image just a little bit differently. Very sketchy, nothing too, let's call it formal, if that makes sense. Now, for the image that I colored, I will keep all the coloring in. And again, I am keeping everything in. So even though I'm doing a voiceover, you're going to see everything that I did to create these cards, to kind of keep what's going on with the other videos where I'm just turning it on and letting it roll. I didn't want to do that with this because I wasn't quite sure how long these were going to take, and it could take a while. All right, so I've got my sentiment stamped, also used the Black Intense ink as well for that, and then I've got just the sprig of the pine with the pine cone. So once I get my stamps back onto the stamp holder, I guess you would want to call that, we are going to start coloring. So whenever I do use my alcohol markers, I do like to have a piece of paper or one of my scratch pads underneath, because they will bleed through. I will also have a color card made that I will have in the blog post. If you have Prismacolor alcohol markers, you will be able to see and know the colors that I used for this image. I'm using 2 shades of brown, and I'm using 3 shades of green. So with the darker shade of brown, and because of the size of the image, I'm just going into the lined areas, the shadowed areas, because the stamp really does show you where the shadow's going to be. And that's where I put the dark. Now I'm going to come in with my lighter shade of brown and just come off of the dark so that it does blend out. Now, this seems very plain and very blah, basically very boring, but that's okay. We're going to jazz this up. Never fear, never fear. This kit had so much in it. It had the full 6x8 stamp set. It had 2 stickles. It had a beautiful pattern paper. It had awesome stickers. Which you will see those as well. Okay, so back to what I'm doing. So all I'm doing with the greens, I'm starting with the lightest, going to the medium, then going to the darkest. And I am literally just flicking off of the center of those pine sprigs. I'm not doing anything more. I'm not going to try to color in these areas. I'm going to use those black lines as accents in a way. And to add just a little bit of depth. And here I come in with the darker shade of green. I'm then just going to real quick fill in with the lighter brown for the stem, and then the darker shade up at the top. This is going to be mounted on a piece of pattern paper, but as you can see, I'm sitting there thinking. Yes. I originally planned on this card to be a portrait and not a landscape. So when I cut the paper, because of course I try to think ahead, which I should really stop doing, I wanted the wood grain to go up and down. Now it's going side to side. It's okay. Again, we let it go. We keep going. It just gives it a different look. I am using my tape runner to attach that panel onto the pattern paper design. My card base is a standard A2 size card base, which is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and it will be now a side folding. I did grab a stickles for my stash, and that's what I'm going to accent the pine cone with and the center of the pine sprigs. I'm actually putting a drop and then stretching it out over the piece just to give it a little bit of flicker look. And that is our first card. For our next card, I just took one of the pieces of pattern paper and I trimmed it. It had a lot of border pieces, and I love the one that had the stockings on it. So I'm going to put the stockings in place because I want to set my sentiment. Now I'm going to end up turning this. I will make this a portrait instead of a landscape. I was going to use the sentiment Joy. It's a beautiful font, but then I wanted the other sentiment, Happy Holidays, because what I was using for the sentiment is I'm going to be using the Wow Cloud 9 embossing glitter powder that came in the kit. So once I have that sentiment positioned, I'm just going to pull in my Ranger pouch. I'm going to prep my cardstock, and then I'm going to use my VersaFine ink to stamp that image. And I'm going to stamp that a couple times. Once I have that stamped, I will grab a piece of scratch paper, and then I will pour the embossing powder over my image. I do really enjoy this embossing powder, even though it's glitter. Sometimes I love the effect of the glitter embossing powders, but for me, they're very glittery and it just falls apart. This does not. I was very surprised actually on how this looks after it is heat embossed. It's absolutely gorgeous. And it's great for those fine details. So this is the panel that we're going to work with. I am going to grab some double-sided foam tape, and I want this propped up. Now, this double-sided foam tape that I'm using is by Uline. It's at a great price point, but it's not forgiving. And what I mean by that is once it touches paper, it's contacted. To pull off the release paper, I've got to push down the corner and grab the corner of the release paper so that it would come off. So getting the release paper off is pretty difficult. I'm going to trim off the sides using my long shears, and then I'm just going to do another trim so that it is even with the panel. Now, what also came into the kit was a pack of die cuts, which, oh yes, you'll be seeing those in a lot of action. And then within there was some twine, and there was also some silver bells. So you will see those in a moment. I did use my tape runner to apply this panel onto my mat, and now I'm going to use my liquid glue to attach it to my standard A2 size card base. Once that's set, I'm then going to grab this twine gather the bells, and I'm going to tie a bow. And then once that's tied, I will use some glue dots to make sure that that stays secured in place. Because of those bells, that bow is not as strong as what I would like it. But because of the glue dots, it'll hold just fine. And it'll also hold the twine in place as well, which is really what I'm looking for. Just saying. I'm going to trim some of the ends, and that is our second card. For our third card, here come the die cuts and the vintage photo. You all knew that was going to make an appearance, right? Absolutely. So I am just inking up the edges of each of my die cut, and then I'm also using this, it's an old makeup brush that I had. It was an extra one, and I'm just using that to go over the image. It gives it a softer look and dulls down that bright white. I don't want to have that cardstock so bright. I do want it to kind of match with everything else. So just a few pieces when I go around the edge. I do realize that I want to go over with that brush just to tone down all of the brightness. And again, it just adds a hint of color, which I really do like. I do like the color. Once that's all done, we are then going to have fun layering. Now, what I chose to layer on is a piece of black cardstock. I thought with the colors that I was choosing, there was a lot of reds here and a lot of ivory. It would really stand out on the black cardstock. So I'm just playing around with the placement of these pieces, because I do know that my sentiment's going to be at the top and the bottom, but I don't want to cover too much up, like that one, like Mary's covering up the top of the December tag. I want to be able to see that somewhat. So again, just playing with how everything's going to be arranged. I'm going to use both my liquid adhesive and my double-sided foam squares to set everything in place. Now you can tell I'm kind of using more glue than what I would normally do, but that also allows me to lift up my pieces so that I can place and tuck and rearrange some things if I have to. Now the long part of the video here is all the placement of the double-sided foam squares. I'm just saying. And the cutting down of the double-sided foam squares. So, there's a lot going on here. I did want everything else against the black cardstock, but I really wanted the sentiment to be raised up, to actually come up off of the card. And then once I have these all in place, what did come in the kit was some two stickles, actually, a red and a green. And what's great with them, the main color is red and green, but they have green and gold flecks in for the red. And then for the green, it has red and gold flecks sitting throughout it. So there's a lot of colors going on, and I was concerned because since I used black cardstock that they weren't going to show. Well, they do. It's really awesome, actually, just how well they do show up on the black cardstock. So, unfortunately, the video, I don't think will show it the way that I would want it to. But I'm looking at it right now. It looks absolutely terrific. So I'm pulling off the release paper, and now I'm going to set the Christmas down towards the bottom. So it also kind of looks like everything's coming out of Christmas. It's almost like a pocket, which is what I was going for also. I'm going to remove the release paper. Yeah, wow. The release paper off of the Mary, and then that will be set up on the top as well. Still covering up the December, but you know what? I let it go. Yes, I did. I'm going to use my liquid adhesive on the back, and I'm going to set this down onto my standard A2 size card base, and it will cover the entire front. Here's where I'm bringing in the stickles. And I don't use them like I do with Nuvo drops. You know, Nuvo drops, you're trying to create a drop. On these, I like to squeeze a little bit out and then use the nozzle to flatten them out. I don't look for dimension when it comes to my stickles. I'm just looking for that glitter, that shine to come through. So I don't need it to be a dome. Plus, if it's not a dome, they dry quicker. Just saying. Okay, for our next card, I got to play with these beautiful stickers. Again, it's by Tim Holtz, The Ideology. These are wonderful vintage stickers. So I'm really going to have some fun here playing with these. Now, of course, you saw that go right down onto the piece of paper. Totally forgot to do the vintage photo around that, but that's okay. Here I'm just grabbing a piece of cardstock, and some of the stickers will go on there. It'll just make them a little bit stronger. I could have stuck the Santa Claus on there, but I was in no way, shape, or form going to fussy cut him. Yeah, Not at all. I'm just saying. So, I do realize this, and I will make everybody nervous, because I do pull him off that piece of paper, and everything's fine. What I am doing with some of the other stickers, I'm trying to get rid of the stickiness, and I'm doing that by using my anti-static powder tool. So I'm going to want that sprig to come off that corner, and then I'm going to use the poinsettia one to come off of the opposite corner. So again, it's always layering. It's always mixing and matching. When you layer, and it's tough, I mean, you want to make sure that everything matches. So as I was pulling these stickers, I was making sure that there was a theme going on. Here's where I realize about the vintage photo. There's a theme, but everything doesn't have to match perfectly. It's no different than when we take a stamp set and we pull in another stamp set for a sentiment or another image. It can work that way. So this is kind of what this is doing, because I will go to another page to pull in. It seemed like each page had a certain theme. So the first one, of course, was vintage banners. The next one were vintage cards or postcards. This one is just different ephemera. And then the last few pages are sentiments, just words, which are great. So I am grabbing one of those cards. I'm placing that down onto my cardstock and then trimming around it, again, to make it a little bit sturdier. Here's where I'm going to peel off Santa gingerly and see it worked. I'm going to go around the edge with the vintage photo. And then I'm going to cover the back of him with some double-sided foam squares. I do want to prop him up. So that will also help subside the stickiness on him. I have stuck the poinsettia and the other sprig directly onto my design panel. And now I'm just, again, playing with the placement of my pieces. I know those 3 cards there are going to sit on the right-hand side, where Santa's going to go onto the left. The 2 cards or placards are going to be propped up using the double-sided foam squares. I will set these at an angle. And then once they're placed, I'll remove the release paper and set him in place. Now I'm just looking for more, and of course I'm going to grab one of those stamps and just have that come out from underneath the card. I'm looking at these sentiments, and I'm just going to grab a few and have them placed around onto the background of this panel. And again, it's almost like it's filling in those areas, filling in those spots. I'm going to use my liquid adhesive to set that down directly onto my pattern paper, which is cut at 4 5 1/4. I will trim off the edges of those greeneries that are hanging off. And then that just kind of ties in the whole feeling of that panel. I'll use my liquid glue to set that down on my standard A2 size card base. For our last card, and I think this one's my favorite, and I think it's because of the tone, the color in which it has. So, of course, vintage photo around everything. Even though it's gray and white or black and white, vintage photo looks great around those pieces. I'm also going to go around the card base while it's folded, because the pattern paper panel is cut 4 by 5 1/4. Going to set the card in the upper left-hand corner. I'm going to use some double-sided foam squares and set those in behind the tag. Now the tag does have an opening at the top, and I will be using some of my twine to attach to the top of the tag. And you can see I'll thread that through. I will cut the one loop, and then I will use my paper creaser to curl those ends around. I'll remove the release paper, and that's going to sit towards the bottom of the pattern paper design piece. Now what I'm doing, I'm off camera here, but I'm actually pulling the rest of the release paper. I have put a ton of double-sided foam squares there. Oh yeah. So once that's set down, I'll be able to trim off the bottom of that tag. So again, it looks like it's continuing off the page. Be careful ever cleaning those scissors. They are extremely sharp. I should not be doing that. Please don't do that. I'm going to add a foam square to one side. And then I'm going to adhere that along the bottom of my design panel. I've secured the black and white snowflake at the top. And now I'll use my liquid adhesive to attach this to my standard A2 size card base. And that is our last and final card. Okay, everyone, I hope you enjoyed. These are the close-ups of the 5 cards that we made using the limited edition Simon Says Christmas card kit. So you can see lots of vintage going on, but also very many other possibilities with it. Here I just added the little jingle bells that was in the die cut pack, and I just cut some of the paper. Again, we can let our pattern paper do the work. Use that wonderful Wow Cloud 9 embossing powder. And let me tell you what, that's really, I love that glitter embossing powder. It doesn't get all over the place. It's wonderful. This here is just one of the stamps. I accented it with my Prismacolor alcohol markers. And again, we just did some flicks when it came to those outsides. And then I just accented it with, from my stash, one of the gold stickles. I am a fan of the stickles. I think they are awesome. They have many purposes. For the third card, I just added the red and the green that came with the kit in the stickles, and then I did just a lot of layering and making sure I propped up the Merry Christmas. You all knew that the vintage photo was going to make an appearance, correct? Of course you did. Here I used those wonderful Tim Holtz stickers that added just some, I'm sorry, my cat is having too much fun off the camera here, and yeah. So here I just used the stickers. I backed them up on some cardstock to make them thicker. Again, that vintage photo, and just created the items to come off the panel that I was adding onto the cardstock that came with the kit. And then finally, I think this one is absolutely my favorite. I love the muted colors, but the softness of the colors, even though it's black, it's a charcoal. It's not that solid black. So just to have these silhouettes on here are just absolutely phenomenal. And then just having the jingle all the way just makes these cards perfect. So again, I do hope you enjoy these. This is day 17 of my 2019 Christmas series. I do hope you're enjoying it. And if you've made it this far, hang in there. We've only got 8 more days left. All the supplies that I used, of course, will be listed down below. I will see if this kit is possibly still available at the time that this will show. If you have any questions or comments, please leave those down below as well, and I will get back to you as soon as I can. If you haven't already, I would love for you to subscribe, and maybe I'll have an icon on here that you can click. If not, the button's down below. Make sure you ring the bell because you want to make sure you are notified when the next video is coming out and available for you to watch. I hope everyone is having a great day. We are getting closer to all of the wonderful holidays of this season. I hope everyone is enjoying, but most of all, remember what's most important for me. Always be creative. Till next time. See ya.